Please.
So our next speaker is an international traveler. He went to many conferences like Black Hat or others, and so this one will be delivered in English with a demo. So.
Whoa!
Yeah. Thanks. So I will try to speak very loud. No, maybe because it's very hot in the back, so I know for sure. So we are going to talk about Kubernetes. So with some tool I made, which is named kdigger. So actually, have some people in the room have experience with Kubernetes or not at all? Okay. So I'm just going to explain. I will speak about pods during the presentation. You can just imagine it's a container, a Linux container. It's not really accurate, but it should work. So yeah, let's go. So yeah, this is me. I'm working at Quartz Lab. I participate in SIG Security, which is like the security focus group of Kubernetes. You can find me on Twitter for, you know. Yeah. So this was like what I wanted to start the presentation with that. So this is the CVE for early 2022. We had a lot of CVEs for like container escapes. So we had like 2 major CVEs on the Linux kernel and 2 major CVEs on the runtime. So the runtimes are basically the part that are like creating the containers into Kubernetes. So yeah, what I wanted to show you is that today we won't. Oh shit, we won't care about that. It's supposed to be a big cross. Anyway, we won't care about these CVEs today. What I wanted to say is that. Oh yeah, right. What I wanted to say is that today, Kubernetes security is mostly about the configuration. It's not really about the vulnerabilities. So they are good, they are nice, but today it's not our priority. So yeah, I will present you kdigger. It's an open source tool. So why did I actually created this thing? I participated in some CTFs. So I observed the habits from some experts in the field. And I love some tool that was called MI-Contain by Jessie Frazel. She was working at Docker at some point. And I wanted to implement something very similar, but for Kubernetes specifically, because it was missing. So what can it do for you? It can do a lot of stuff, you know, but I will show you that later. Basically, it can do a lot of stuff like MI-Contain can do, but it can do other stuff as well, like Kubernetes-focused stuff and very simple stuff. But we will see that maybe in the demonstration it will be more interactive. So yeah, a small disclaimer on that. Some checks relies on implementation and stuff because, yeah, when I investigated MI-Contain, I noticed that some checks were based on kernel details that were no longer working. And I actually implemented some checks for example, on a core DNS wildcard feature, which was a feature you could basically ask the DNS to get you back all the domains, all the services, and it was answering you. And they decided to remove it because most, like everybody that was using that for like attacks. And so yeah, they decided to remove it, which is a good idea, by the way. So the tool needs to be maintained all the time, and something breaks as Kubernetes is moving on. So yeah, let's hop into a demonstration. So the idea is like you have the Kubernetes cluster, which is like the infrastructure, which is like the big square. And the idea is like, what is the issue in terms of collocation when you are running inside of this cluster? So here we have like a web application and a small database. And on the right side, you have like a hardened web app and a hardened DB, which these things are running in the same cluster. And we are going to see how it might not be a very good idea to isolate your things with containers nowadays. So let's see if it works. Shit. Don't want to spoil the magic. Okay. This is really ugly, but no, I think you can read it. So, like the scenario we are given in this situation is that you have like a remote code execution on the web application, and you want to see if you can access some other stuff. So first things first, you might want to know where you are. So just like pop like some command to see. So it's like a basic Linux file system, nothing different, nothing strange. We are running as a user 1000 for those in the back, so we are not running as root. And what is interesting for us is that there is only like 3 processes in our environment. So it's kind of weird if we are like if we broke into a machine, it might be strange that we are running only 3 services. And as you can see, the first one is a web server, right? Sleep Infinity, of course. So it's not systemd or anything. So yeah, the things you would like to do maybe is to download my awesome tool to check if you are into a container, and specifically into a Kubernetes container. So what you want to do is exactly this command. So yeah, you curl the tool, you curl the SHA, you curl everything, you are making this right, and you install that in some place, and then you run the tool. So this is really, really big. So yeah, the tool is a CLI, a basic one. So you have some commands, dig, generate, and the rest is mostly documentation. So the idea is that you will be able to use this tool to dig into your cluster and know a little bit more about your environment. So we are going to do that. If you are not like a psychopath, you can just curl it like that and it will be the same. Anyway. So yeah, first command is list. So you can list, oh, it will be, it's too big. So it will list all the plugins that are available in the CLI. So basically you can scan the admission controller, scan the API resources, scan your authorization, but you can do a bunch of other stuff like, sorry, where is it? You can try to find some information in the C groups, try to retrieve the cloud metadata if you are running inside of a cloud like a Kubernetes instance. Try to detect if you are in a container or things like that. It's mostly heuristics that are a bit fragile, but they should work, hopefully. So yeah, I just wanted to brag. So you can basically output everything in JSON. Yeah, great, thanks. So the first thing we are going to do is to try to see if we are running in a container. So maybe I was a bit too fast on that, but yeah, Linux containers. So containers. So I wanted to show you that. So there is like 6 ints on this thing. It's mostly, yeah, very fragile heuristics, but it's like, is systemd the first PID? Is kthread the second PID? Is the inode number this one? Is roots empty, or no, sorry. Is the root file system an overlay file system? Things like that. So here in this situation, we can see we might be running into a container. So the second thing you want to do is to check the environment variables. It's not super reliable, but in most Kubernetes environments, these things are set by the kubelets. So they will give you some information about where the API server of Kubernetes actually lies. So yeah, I introduced Kubernetes pretty fast, but the idea with Kubernetes is that you have a control plane with the API, with the database, with everything that makes work Kubernetes, and you have nodes. These nodes are basically the workers on which you want to deploy your containers or your containers, your pods. So what you want to do next is you are running inside of a container. You know that for sure. You are running maybe into a Kubernetes cluster. So you want to contact the Kubernetes API to retrieve like some information about the version. If it answers to you, it's a good thing, because it means that you can actually dialogue with them. So here we see that it's, maybe you don't see in the back, but it's version 122. Today we are at 125, so it's a pretty old version, but it's pretty okay. So what you want to do next, maybe check out the C groups, because they will like leak some information as well. So it's just reading the C group file system, and you will see that there is like some stuff here that leaks that you are running inside of a Kubernetes cluster. So for now, you are very sure that you are running inside of it. So what you want to do next, you are running inside of a container, you would like to maybe escape or pivot to something else. The next thing you can do is check your capabilities, because if you have a lot of capabilities, and if you have like especially really like big capabilities, Linux capabilities, it might imply that you are running inside of a privileged container. So a privileged container on Docker or on Kubernetes is basically not a container. It's just like a file system, but there is not like no namespace isolation at workings here, no C groups. So here we check, and it seems we are not running inside of some privileged container. So it's not that great for the rest of the penetration tests. and there is like a flag that is set to false. Okay, whatever. So what you want to do next is maybe to try to retrieve some credentials, because in Kubernetes cluster you usually have tokens that are mounted in each of these containers by default. They don't have rights by default, but they are mounted here because you need them to actually authenticate you to talk to the API server. So here they are like a token, which is nice. You are running inside a default namespace. It's not like the Linux namespace, it's the Kubernetes namespace. And you have a certificate to actually talk to the API server. So yeah, because you are a hacker, you can retrieve this token and do some stuff with it and everything. Who cares? What you want to do next is to see what you can do actually with this token. So we'll actually interrogate the API. It was something that was added in the late version of Kubernetes, but now you can actually check what can I do with this token. So what can you do with this token? You can do these things, a lot of things. You can actually create pods, so you can create new containers in the clusters. You can exec into them, so you can create processes into these containers. And you can see the logs and stuff. So we can do pretty much a lot of things. So this view is basically just a ripoff of this thing, the kubectl auth-can-I list. So not that exclusive. And you can basically do it by curl if you are a psychopath again. So I will just let it run a little bit. If you like write it JSON on the command line, you can do it. It's alright. So basically you have the same result. I'll just truncate the thing because otherwise it's completely messed up the terminal. So right, oh, okay. So now we have some authorization. Maybe you saw, but we can also get some pods, which is, maybe this view is better. We can get some pods and list some pods. So if you remember the situation, it was the web application and the Arden web app that we want to target, the Arden DB especially. So maybe we can just list all these pods and exec directly into that thing. And it says we don't have the right cluster ride to do this thing, so we can maybe just do it at our like namespace level. Right. So here, maybe I can do this for the people in the back. Oh no, sorry. Maybe it's a bit better. Why shit. So yeah, we can list these pods, but it seems that the database that we want to reach is not in our Kubernetes namespace. So it means that our rights are restricted to only this default namespace, which does not host the Arden web app. So next step, because we can create these pods, maybe we can create like a privilege container, because I spoke about the privilege container earlier. It was like our gate to our privilege escalation, so maybe we can do that. So we can use kdigger dig admission s. So basically what it does, it talks to the API server and it tries to create these resources, and the API server will respond back like yes or no, are you allowed or not to do that. So here I implemented something that was added in the last version. Now you can do dry run server commands, dry run server side queries. So basically everything is happening like it was a real request, but the persistence is not done in the last stage. But you still have the logs and everything, so it's not that discrete. That's why I added like S flag, which means like side effects or something like that. So if you really want to create these pods, because actually, oh yeah, there is something I didn't explain. So basically you have the right to create these pods with the authorization, but there is something in the API server that will be like, you can add plugins to actually say, yeah, I want these people to create pods, but I just want these people to create non-privileged pod, because if they can create privileged pod, they can basically be root on any node of the cluster. I see my friends having fun in the back. So yeah, if you want to create for real these things, because actually the admission plugins can be aware that you are like trying to dry run, create these things. So you can just want to create these things for real and we try to create these containers for real. So here we have to first, because we will not be able to delete the artifacts. So if we check, we just created a bunch of pods that are invalid, sorry. And they just check that we can create a pod, a container mounting the host file system, like create a privileged pod and everything. So yeah, next step. Yeah, at this stage you can use the generate things of kdigger. So the idea of this command is that, oh sorry, I will maybe up. So the idea of this command is that it's actually help her to generate templates for you to deploy your stuff on the clusters. Because usually I don't remember how to write these YAMLs because you have to remember a lot of fields and everything. So here we can create like a privileged container with this image and this command and everything. So you can do it like that quite easily, and you have like your template that you can directly pass into the Kubernetes cluster. We'll talk about that a little bit after. But here in my situation, I will just like use a shell script that will create a new container, and we'll use like nsenter for those who knows, which will enter all the names, the Linux namespaces of the host directly. So basically what it does is that it creates a privileged container with the host file system mounted, and it try to enter all the namespace of the PID1 of this of the host. So basically the idea is you are in a container and you want to jump to the host. So it should work because I load, oh yeah, it worked. So here we are in a different situation. Because why? Because we are running as root and we are running as well on the host. So basically now that we are running on the host that hosts all these containers, you can basically access anything from them. So we can use something called cryctl. It's a bit like the Docker CLI, for those who knows. And you can list all the containers that are running on the host. So you can see that there is my little nsenter thing. So this is the container I use to pivot actually. There is their web application, but there is more importantly the MySQL. And because the web application is hardened, they use MySQL, you know, of course. And what you want to do is to get that ID and to learn a little bit more about that. So let's inspect. And there is a lot of information here, but what is interesting is because it's a database running inside of a cluster, they might use volumes. So we just have to find the volume that hosts the database. It's the first one, fortunately. It's random, so. It's the first one, so in the container, in the file system container, they mount at mount/database this folder from the host. So we can just go to this folder from the host. Of course. Of course. And now we are at this position, and we just find like the database of the thing, you know. And of course, you know, like you find the flag and everything is finished. So okay, that's it for the demonstration. Thank you, that's nice. It was not that amazing. But so what exactly happened? I will recap a little bit because it was a lot of shenanigans. Oh, there is color normally, but the projector, okay, whatever. So basically the situation is that we were in this place, which is the namespace defaults, and we had like another namespace. So like, don't mix the Linux namespace and the Kubernetes namespace. These are Kubernetes namespace. This is just a logical separation for rights, for authorizations. So what happened to be is that we had like a vulnerability in the container. So nice, it was like the first entry point, the attack vector. Then we found some credentials into the container. So it actually allowed us to speak to the API server of the Kubernetes cluster and ask for a privileged container to escalate. And the API server responded okay, because there were no admission control at all. So it was like yes or no, you can create a container, you can create any container. So what can you do? Oh yeah, so we had a privileged pod, and privileged pod is basically a root process that is root on the host. So you can escalate to everything, you can retrieve anything, and oh, there was a meme hidden here, maybe you can see.
All your base are belong to us?
Yeah, all your base are belong to us, shit, you know. You know that one for sure. So how to fix these issues? Maybe you don't really care because you don't run Kubernetes cluster, but usually people actually cares about these things. So yeah, the first problem, vulnerabilities. Try to write software without vulnerabilities, of course. This is the most complicated part. Everybody fails at that. It's super hard. Even if you like analyze your code and do everything, it's super hard. So try to audit your code, try to, I don't know, be responsible. So it will basically remove the first attack vector, which will like get rid of the attack. But you know, as researcher, what we consider always that like that the app is breached. So we don't really care about this first step. So next step, we found those credentials. Try to not mount credentials into your containers because it's possible. By default, it will mount containers, but you can avoid to do that. And there is like guides that are written on the Kubernetes documentation at the moment. So there is this role-based access control good practice. Fun to read, you know, for your night in winters. It's nice. So yeah, it will eliminate the second thing, which is like the credentials lying around. It's not a problem specific to Kubernetes, but yeah. And then the third issue, no admission control. So the admission control is this little bit of authorization that you can put on top of your Kubernetes cluster that will allow to make something more granular that just disallow or allow to create a pod or anything. So if some people actually use Kubernetes in the past, they might be familiar with pod security policy, which is something that was removed recently. And now we have the pod security, which is more simple and more easy to use, but whatever. So yeah, pod security admission, documentation, pod security standards. They implemented 3 standards because people don't want to, like the previous one was too complicated. Because the security was too complicated, nobody was using it. So they implement something really dumb with like 3 profile, and no people might use it. So it's nice. It's really, no, whatever, sorry. They wrote a really nice blog, but you don't run Kubernetes cluster. And I wrote some blog on the Kubernetes website. Anyway, so it will get rid of this third issue, so the no admission controller part, and it will just get back like a no response. Because you wanted to create a privileged container, it will say, yeah, no, you can create a pod, but you cannot create like a privileged one. Even me, I cannot see what's on the slides. This is basically the repo. So this is the repository of kdigger. So everything is open source. It's on my company's GitHub. And there is like a small CTF. If you are interested, if you happen to be interested in CTFs on Kubernetes, you can use this. It's really, really beginner friendly. It's really simple, but it's a cool entry point if you want to try. So yeah, the step that I did is included in this thing. So you basically got spoiled. I don't know if it really works, maybe. So we wrote a small blog on my company website. This is the link to the article, trust me. Yeah, so I did a lot of stuff. So basically I tried to maintain this tool. I added some plugins in the past. I added RAM64 support even Darwin. And you can now install kdigger with Nix, and you can use nixery.dev. If you don't know nixery.dev for container images, it's amazing. You can basically create a container image with one line, like nixery.dev/bash/kdigger, and you have bash in kdigger in the container image. Magic. And I added the pod manifest generation. But for you guys, because I know that you are more security hardcore, I added some stuff, you know, brand new. So please admire my slide. I added some fuzzing because basically some guy went, maybe you cannot see, but basically some guy went on my repository and was like, can you do fuzzing? I was like, yes. So yeah, I did fuzzing. So I discovered like, what can Google do for me for fuzzing, because they basically do everything for fuzzing. So I went on GitHub and found like something called GoFuzz, which is like amazing. You can just, so you cannot see maybe in the back, but it's like fuzz new. You create an object. You have like some structure, some integers. You pass that to the fuzzer, and it just generates like arbitrary data. It's amazing. You cannot do that in C. I always struggle with libprotobuf and all this shit. You know, it's a mess. So you will not see anything. I'll try to make, yeah. So this is basically the whole implementation of the fuzzer. This is 40 lines. So I just create a new fuzzer. I create some functions to actually mutate some specific stuff like the way I want. So you have, for example, the fuzzer is like, if you came upon like the v1 cctl types, try to generate them like that. Because if you put random shit, it will not work. So it did, yeah, okay. And then I just try to fuzz on line 97. And it just works. It's amazing. I want to show you that.
Did you find any bug?
Sorry?
Did you find any bug?
In what?
You kdigger?
Oh, no, it was not to fuzz kdigger, it was to fuzz...
The Kubernetes?
Yeah, it was to fuzz the Kubernetes API, your admission control. The idea is to generate like, I will show you.
So now you're fuzzing from kdigger the Kubernetes API?
Yep, somehow, yeah, exactly. Let me show you. Let's see if I can make this work. Yeah. So it's basically using this thing. So the idea is you basically like try to generate new containers and it will just generate random stuff for you. So you can generate a bunch of YAMLs and bunch of stuff and just put that to your admission control and maybe you will find some issues in your admission control, whatever. I just wanted to finish on that because I love working in the open source community of kdigger, of Kubernetes. We merged this thing which is called the security checklist. It was a big piece of documentation you cannot really see, but it's like something for helping people to deploy secure Kubernetes cluster, which is nice. And a friend just merged like the API server bypass risks, which are like a lot of unknown knowledge on Kubernetes that was published. It was mostly knowledge that was passed among experts in the field, and now it's public knowledge, which is cool. So I'm done. Thank you.
Pour les questions, répète les questions avec le micro pour la captation, s'il vous plaît.
Okay.
So, do you have any questions, please? I'm sure you have.
Go ahead. Go ahead. No questions.
Come on.
I think one thing you forgot to mention is fuzzing the admission controller makes sense because it can be third-party software.
Exactly.
Like many vendors on the market were actually doing. So you can actually find bug in the admission controller and it's not part of the Kubernetes code base.
Exactly. Yeah, you can use some third-party one and write your own rules. So it might be interesting to try to bypass your own flowed rules.
Is there any?
Do you have any advice for tools to test the security of Kubernetes?
Environment, like Kubernetes clusters. She asked like. Yeah. She asked, do you have any advice for Kubernetes tools in general for Kubernetes security? Yeah, I have one very nice tool. Oh, not again. It's kdigger. It's really nice. No, just kidding. You have a bunch of tools. You have tools for scanning. You have the things done by Armosec, which is I don't remember, maybe kubescape or something like that. But you have actually some tools to check against like how do you say that, more like governance checks, like CIS compliance benchmark, all that stuff. Actually the NSA and the CISA like wrote some kind of guide, and some people made a tool to check against this guide. For the names, I would have to check. I don't know them by heart because I don't work on Kubernetes. No, just kidding. But yeah, there is a really nice tool that I love, which is called Kubelet CTL. So there is this company called CyberArk that is doing stuff on Kubernetes, and it's cool because they actually wrote a CLI client for the kubelet API, because by default the kubelet API is exposed on most clusters. I think it was the case on DigitalOcean clusters and things like that. And you can deploy or exec into things with that, so it's nice. So you have CyberArk with Kubelet CTL and these things, maybe kubescape, and you have all these Kubernetes benchmarks or kubehunters. You have Aqua Security that is doing a lot of stuff on that thing. What else? Do you have any ideas?
No, that the API is not exposed anymore, because it used to be, many ransomwares were deployed using the publicly exposed API, and then you can just schedule a pod and get, that was like a couple of years ago. I think most providers stopped doing this.
Yeah, on Google they stopped. I think on I don't know, maybe on Adobe. Most big providers tend to do that correctly. But yeah, for other tools, I don't really use a lot of these tools, but these are nice tools. Kubunter for Aqua Security is a nice one. But yeah, I might get a better list if I check after. Sorry, no problem.
Other questions?
Is there any antivirus detection for your tool? Is it considered malware? Or?
Maybe, because it's scanning all the Cisco, you can do a lot of stuff with that. So I don't know. Oh, sorry. You asked that if there is like any antivirus
Is
alerts.
Windows Defender for Linux detecting your tool as a malware?
Sorry, what did you say?
Is there any antivirus software or EDR or XDR detecting this as malware?
Yeah, okay. So the question was like, is there any detection mechanism by the antivirus for this tool? The answer is like no, because it's super stealth. Like, no, I don't know. I don't know for sure. Like maybe rename it if you use it. I don't know. No, I don't know really. I don't know at all. But it's really something that you should only use at the moment you are doing your pen test. So it's really punctual stuff. So maybe yeah, you can write like a Falco rule or anything that will kill the process. Like, but it can even kill the process before. Like if you spawn a bash. Or if you spawn like any process in a container, you should be killed actually. But I'm not aware of anything. But yeah.
Other questions?
We are very hot down here, aren't you?
Okay, thank you very much, mate.
Thank you.